Hey friends, this is Lisa Qualls. I blog at onethankfulmom.com, and you can find lots of my writings there. I'm glad you're here. I'm hoping that more people are going to join us. Today I have more time. Sometimes I do very short, more like tips, types clips or videos, but today I have a longer amount of time to discuss my topic for today, which is siblings. What do we do about the other kids, the kids who are already in the family, already in the home, when we're going to add new children to our families? And, sometimes people think what I mean is bio kids who are in the family and then we add adopted children, but that's not necessarily the case in a lot of families. In some families, their whole family is built by adoption. And so what I'm talking about more is when you have a family that's established and then you adopt or foster children from hard places, kids who've had trauma in their lives. How is that going to affect the family you already have? What can you do to help the children already in the family? How might they feel? What are they going to experience? And this is a really big issue for me because I think primarily because Russ and I would agree that we made a ton of mistakes in this area. And if we could go back and do it all again, we would do things differently. But we don't get to do that. So I would like to take our mistakes and all the things we learned and try to help some of you who are maybe a little earlier in the process, or just if you need acknowledgement for what's happening in your family, for the challenges and things that might be hard, or things that you're trying to figure out with your kids. So I'm working on a book about siblings, and I also speak on this topic at conferences. And most recently, I've gotten to speak with one of my daughters. Both Anna Rose and Claire have spoken with me, which is really, really fantastic. And we are doing a talk that we did as a breakout at a conference on the experience of having siblings, very traumatized siblings, join the family. And it was a lot of fun. Well, actually, it was very emotional. It was fun in its own ways, but there were tears. I mean, it was not easy. Anna Rose and I spoke in California not too long ago, and it was really good. And I think it was really good because she was really, really good. So, talking with my own kids, and then with the book that I'm writing, I have been sending surveys out to anyone who has experienced being in a family and then having other kids join. So my youngest participant, I think, is 5 years old. I'm going to share some of his responses. And then I have responses from adults who grew up in families where kids joined their family. So I thought I would share some of those and comment. I think that we could talk on this topic, well, I definitely could, for multiple videos because it's so important and dear to my heart, and it really actually does make me cry a lot, so I will try not to cry. Russ and I used to joke that we could go and talk at adoption things, but we could never mention our daughter Claire because we would both cry. Because, she, in our particular family, we had our 7 kids by birth, and then we adopted 4 children from Ethiopia, and our 2 daughters were older than Claire, and our 2 sons were younger than Claire. So she was sandwiched right in the middle and experienced the most upheaval in her life. Although also, Anne Rose, all of the children experienced tremendous change. And, but that little girl right in the middle there, that was very, very, very hard. So anyhow, I'm going to share some of the responses I've gotten on surveys and talk a little bit about them. And then maybe we'll revisit this topic again in the future. And if you have questions, please put them up for me. I want to make sure I don't go too long because then nobody watches these videos if they're ridiculously long. But I really do want to answer questions if I'm able to. So I'm just going to take a quick peek. I see some of you are here, which is really cool. Hi, Kate and Kendra and Rachel and Melanie. Hey, that's fun. I know all of you. So hopefully more people will join us too. All right, so I'm going to read some of these surveys, just some of the kids' questions, some of the answers to the questions that I sent, because I think they're so fascinating. And some of these kids have had hard experiences. Some have been easy. To be honest, I weeded out some of the very, very hardest and some of the very, very super, super easy, cheerful. Everybody should adopt 12 kids because it's all beautiful. I kind of weeded those out and tried to go for some that are a little more in the middle, but having had challenging kids. And there were some that I wanted to share with you, but my printer stopped working. So if we do this topic another time, I will share some of those next time because there were some amazing comments from people. Okay, so I'm going to read this first one, just a couple of questions here. This is from a 13-year-old girl. And the question was, what would you recommend to parents who are preparing to add kids to their family? How can they best prepare the children in the home currently, and how can they help the transition go as smoothly as possible? So this girl answered, parents, expect it to be much harder than you planned, because it will be. Don't get discouraged, but you have to know it will probably not be anything like you thought it would be. Many parents think that when they adopt, the child will be extremely grateful and will be willing to do anything because they are so thankful that they now have a family. Okay. I hope none of us think that, because that is a bad way to go into adoption and fostering. But okay, so but the children have lots of things they need to work out. First of all, they didn't necessarily ask for you. Very good point, especially when we're talking about older child international adoption. For some kids, they think they're doing fine at the orphanage. Be prepared to have a child who will be a lot, all in caps, a lot of work. You may love them, but they may have trouble coming to trust you. I think the best way for parents to prepare children would be to let them know that it will not be easy. Your adopted child will be hard to live with. When we first adopted, I don't know what I had in mind, but it certainly wasn't a life of fear or regret. Heavy words. She says, I'm not saying that everything will be terrible, but a lot of it will take patience, kindness, and lots of close friends to help you through it. And that's something I want to comment on right there. Our kids need their own support systems when new kids join the family. And we needed, like for our family, we needed friends that could come alongside our kids. And in fact, we ended up joining a church that had a youth ministry, which we had never had before, because our kids needed adults who cared about them, who could support them and participate in their lives. I'll never forget going to one of Anna Rosa's track meets when she was in high school, probably pretty young in high school, and looking over and seeing our youth pastor there with some of the kids from the youth group there to support her at that track meet, which was a huge, huge gift. And then many, many friends who've helped us too. All right, same child, 13-year-old girl. Did you have any fears when new kids came into your home? And her answer was, at first I didn't, but after the rages, I certainly did. I don't really know how to add to my answer beyond that point. Okay, and this is one of my favorite questions in this whole survey. How has this experience shaped you? And I'll read several of these from different kids. And she says, the experience of adoption has really changed me in the fact that I now know how to be a friend to others who are going through hard times. I'm able to understand a little of what they are going through because there's a good chance I've gone through it myself. You know, we worry a lot about the impact this has on our kids. And, you know, definitely, like I've said, I wish that we would have done a lot of things differently. But I will say that a lot of these young people answering and adults will say that they were shaped in positive ways by the experience of having these siblings. Okay, here's a young adult male, and he says, I asked, what would you recommend to parents who are preparing to add kids to the family? He says, I would recommend parents go into this understanding what the hardest situations might be. I think if you're going to adopt kids from hard places, you need to have an accurate understanding of what those hard places do to children and the challenges that those kids can bring with them. And that speaks to really the importance of reading, studying, finding supports before you ever bring your children home. And, you know, I'm an idealist, and I tend to think things are going to all work out. Well, I think we can do things to actually help things work out, like making our homes safer and preparing our kids. And so anyhow, that's my comment on that. And then this young man, how has this experience shaped you or changed you? He says, adopting has made me a much more compassionate and understanding individual. It has given me a better understanding of trauma, loss, mental illness, and the messy parts of life. It has shown me how much our circumstances can shape who we are and why we need to extend grace and love to everyone. So for those of you who are joining us, we are talking about siblings, how to prepare, how to help our other children when new children join the family. And I see more of you coming. Thanks. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, this one's kind of fun. This one's a little guy, 5.5. His mom interviewed him and then just transcribed his answers. So they're pretty cute. In this case, he's 5.5, and he had 2 little brothers join the family, adopted through foster care, I guess about 1.5 years before this, so when he was 4. So the first question was, what's the best part about having new siblings? They're adopted. He says, you get to help them and teach them things. And then the hardest things, he said, sharing mommy and daddy and having to share my toys. He'd been an only child for a period of time prior to his younger brothers joining the family. So it was a very big adjustment for him, as you can imagine it would be. And she asked, how can you help the kids in the family, like him, prepare for new siblings? And he says, let your kids help you get ready for new brothers and sisters, like buying new beds and stuff. I think that's great. I mean, letting our kids help in practical ways definitely is a good way to help them engage and prepare for the new siblings to join the family. And then one of my questions on the survey is what their opinion is on changing the birth order of family. I don't know quite how his mom explained it, but she explained it. He said, I wouldn't like it if my brothers were older than me. I just wouldn't like it. It would be scary if all of a sudden I was the littlest. So he went from being an only to being an older brother. And that he seems to have really managed very, very well, but he couldn't imagine having older siblings come into the family. And then he says, I don't remember exactly what this question is. He says, it's now hard, but it used to not be hard. I'm a big brother now, and I look out for my little brothers. And he says, when I was three or four, and it was just me, it wasn't hard. But when we got brothers, it was hard. A lot of things were hard. And then in terms of advice for parents, he says, make sure, or for siblings, actually, this is advice for other kids. Make sure if you get new brothers or sisters that you share your toys with them. It helps me to stay up later. This is what I really want you to hear. It helps me to stay up later so I can have special time with mommy and daddy without my brothers. And I like going on a date alone with mom and dad. The reason that's important is I know in our family, we were very concerned about keeping everything very, very fair. So if we did something with one child, we had to do it with all the children. And I think it's important to remember that all of our kids need different things. Like what my new children that joined our family, my kids from hard places, needed was very, very different from what my children at home needed from me. And what my children at home needed, well, partly they missed me terribly because I was so deeply, deeply engaged with parenting my kids, my new kids who had so much trauma. And so it took us a long time to figure it out that it really was okay for us to spend time with our original set of kids, that was okay, and that they really, really needed it. And at some point, we'll do a video and I'll share some very specific things that our family did. But I think it's fun to hear from other people's kids and other kids. Okay, this is from a 12-year-old girl, and they adopted an older sister from foster care. And she has, so there are three biological daughters in the family, and then they adopted a daughter that kind of was in that birth order near the top. And she says, the greatest blessings are we make more food for dinner, and my little sibling has someone else to talk to. We can have tournaments on the Wii. She said the hardest thing is that her new sister has created a clique with one of her other siblings. We call that forming alliances. And kids, especially if they've been in orphanages or just lots of trauma group homes or foster homes, kids will sometimes try to form an alliance because it helps them feel safer if they have someone that they can count on, but then it's divisive from the other siblings. And that's what she's talking about here. And she says, advice for parents. Give your kids lots of toys. She's joking, she says, chuckle. Tell them the kid is probably going to be a jerk. That way the kids can be nicely surprised when the adopted child is nice sometimes. So, kids don't mince words. This is from this 12-year-old girl. In terms of preparation, she said, think of every detail of every little thing to tell the adopted child so that they know, like which soap to use for the laundry, or they just might use your shampoo. That was pretty good. Advice to other kids who have new children joining the family. She says, to a kid, I would say, try your best to ignore what they say. They are probably not going to be nice. Now remember, they adopted a teenager from foster care. If you get in a fight, back off, because they will win it by force if they have to. Don't try to exclude them, or they and the family members in the clique, meaning some siblings, will get mad too, and you'll get in trouble. Shut up whenever they're upset. Interesting. And then her last little bit of advice was, try not to talk with them about their boyfriends because they'll change in about 2 months. Expect the clique, so the sibling with the alliance, to band together against you in all possible matters. And then she closes with, go Steelers. So obviously in this family, the pain has been that she must have had a closer relationship with a sibling, and when this new sister joined the family, those two became very close, and she felt cut off from her biological sister. And even though she's making kind of light of it, you can hear there's pain there. You know, you can hear it. Okay, this was written by an adult who grew up with her parents being foster parents and then also adopting, and they had a hard situation with their kids that they adopted, and presumably with some of the foster kids too. So the question, what's been the greatest blessing to you of adding siblings through foster care and adoption? She says, I think the biggest blessing is that it taught us to care for others even when it was hard. For me, that is central to my faith. And being a sibling to foster and adoptive kids from hard places was a very concrete way to learn this. I think an unintentional blessing is that my biological siblings and I are probably closer than most since this all started when we were very young. What has been the greatest difficulty? The hardest part about having foster and adopted kids for me as a child was when they would try to hurt my siblings or my parents. I wanted to protect and defend them as the oldest child. We had a very violent adoptive brother, and we had alarms on all our doors in case he tried to leave his room. Many times, kids threatened to kill themselves or the rest of us, and we frequently had to call the police for help as they grew older. That's a hard situation. Very, very hard. And I think we can all have empathy and imagine what that must have been like. And I will just add that when things were very, very difficult in our family, when she's talking about how the hardest thing was seeing her siblings or parents be attacked, when things were really, really bad in our family, and we went to work with a really phenomenal attachment therapist. And one of the things she said to me, and I've never forgotten it, she said, Lisa, your children are growing up in an atmosphere of domestic violence because they were having to see me be harmed by their new siblings. And that was extremely traumatizing for them, as you can imagine. And here I was trying to do my best, thinking so much about my kids from hard places and not really realizing, I think at the time, the harm being done to my children who were witnessing this. That is a very sad, sad, sad thing for me. Okay, what would you recommend to parents who are preparing to add children to their family? She says, I don't know if there's a good way to prepare your kids other than being honest and letting them have a voice in the decision. There's no way you can tell them what it will be like because they won't understand until they actually experience it. But don't tell them it will all be wonderful or hearts and flowers. My parents talked to us about doing foster care beforehand and asked us if it was okay with us. They told us these kids were coming from homes where they were not safe and that they wanted to give them a safe place to stay until they could go home again. They told us the kids would not be like our friends, and it probably wouldn't always be fun, and we would definitely fight. But I didn't believe them until we got our first kid. Be fair and as equal as possible, but not the same. Help your kids to stand up for what they want and not be blown over by these kids just because they've had it tough. You know, we have to remember that these children who come to us, especially at older ages, they are survivors. They've had to protect themselves. They've had to guard themselves or learn how to get what they need because they've lived in such scarcity. Okay, she says, our first kid was a girl, only 7 months younger than me. I expected a best friend, and I got a rival. From the moment she walked through the door, she took over everything, calling my parents mom and dad, borrowed my Sunday shoes to go see our pigs, insisted on a dress exactly like the same one I had already chosen when she could have had any other dress. People at church, here's a good one. People at church told me I was getting a lead in the play, and she said she wanted it, so they gave it to her instead. And then they asked me to sing with her because she couldn't carry a tune. Wow. Don't do that! Exclamation point. Each child has different needs, and that is fine, but don't expect too much from your kids right at first, especially because they will probably be shell-shocked and have no idea that they can tell these new kids no. So I think that is good advice, that we need to teach our children, especially if we're bringing in older kids, that they have a voice. What they feel, what they're experiencing matters. I know that my kids, they didn't want to burden us with what they were experiencing because they could see that we were drowning. I was going to say we were just keeping our heads above water, but actually we weren't even doing that. We were really drowning at some points. And so even though our kids really needed us, I think they kind of went to each other instead because they didn't want to burden us. So our kids do need to know how to keep themselves safe, how to say no, how to come to us. All right, did you have any fears when new kids came into your home? She says, not so much the first time, because despite what my parents told us, I was still sure the new girl was going to be my best friend. This was a foster child. After that, I don't know that I had fears, but I probably braced myself knowing what would come as we started over and over again. All of our kids were different, and I liked some of them better than others, but they all walked in the door calling my parents mom and dad, and they all went through the honeymoon phase and then out of the honeymoon phase. And boundaries had to be established and eccentricities figured out as we learned to know them and how best to fit everyone together and accommodate everyone's needs. Now, of course, she's an adult reflecting back. My parents got better at it too, so I didn't have to worry that the new kid was going to try to be me. And after our first, this is important, I requested that all of our kids be significantly younger than me. So the experience of having a foster child join the family who was very close to her age was difficult. And even as this woman reflects back as an adult, she seems to feel that having the younger siblings was best. One last one from her. What words of advice would you give to somebody whose family is going to adopt new siblings? Her advice is, this is hard, very hard, and love doesn't always fix everything. Make time for each of your kids individually on a regular basis. Hard to do from my experience, but she's right. Give them a voice and really listen to them. Give yourself grace and find a couple good respite buddies. Make time to work on your marriage, and don't ever let a kid play you against your spouse because they will try. It is okay to say that you can't do it, and it is better for all your kids if you don't try to push through when you are at your breaking point. Sometimes you have to let kids go, and that doesn't mean you failed as a foster parent. I see a lot of responses there. I don't know if they're all good, bad, sad, but this is her experience. And I do want to say, I want to comment on something she said there. And look, having good respite buddies. I think what she's responding to here, I'm going to look here. Hi, friends. I see more of you here. I'm so glad to see you. If you have any questions or things you want me to talk about, please shoot them my way because we've been on 23 minutes. I'm going to try not to go excessively long. So if you have a question, send it to me soon. Okay, so she talks about respite buddies. And I think what she's referring to is the importance of respite so that the family has a little time together without the foster children always present. And I know that's hard to think about because we think, they're part of the family, and that is true. But they do bring a lot to the family that's hard. And so it's okay to have respite. Okay, and there was one, make time to work on your marriage and don't ever let a kid play you against your spouse. Good words from this woman who's now an adult. We do need to take time for our marriages, and that's really, really hard when you are just barely hanging on sometimes. But if you are a foster parent, respite is important. If you're an adoptive parent, it's also important, but it's a lot different, especially for those of us who adopted, I think, internationally, where we'd never even met our children before they joined the family. We didn't expect that we were going to need the kind of help that we needed. So find your people, join the support group before your kids even come home. Get to know people that you can share respite with. Okay, I'm going to look at a question here. My friend Gina. Gina, by the way, makes the best weighted blankets. If you need a weighted blanket, there's a link on my blog, but you can look on Facebook at Spokane Weighted Blankets. She does custom fabrics. Awesome. Anyhow, hi, Gina. She says, what would you recommend for our family? We are a foster family, usually taking 0 to age 1. Whenever we're about to take a new placement, we conference with all the kids, ages 12, 9, 6, and 4, and the 9-year-old always resolutely says no. And then when we do take the placement anyway, he'll complain that baby takes all your time. I can't wait for her to leave. Super rude stuff like that, and I'm at a loss. Okay, that's hard. I don't know if I'm very good at giving advice on this kind of stuff. I would say that sometimes our kids do have to do things that are hard, and this child's not bringing harm to them. It's not scary, but they're having a hard time sharing you. And I think we have to balance out the fact that our children, they definitely, their opinion matters, but they don't make the final decision. And sometimes our kids do have to experience sacrifice and hard things, but I think we have to take enough breaks that they feel like especially when we're talking foster care, that they feel like they get their mommy and daddy back for a period of time and get to kind of reconnect and kind of get strengthened back up before another child comes. It's a balance. We're experiencing that somewhat ourselves. And we're listening. We're listening to our child who's having the hardest time. And we have an amazing foster daughter. She's remarkable. And still, for some kids, especially when they are also from hard places, for some kids, it's hard. Okay, we are getting close to 30 minutes, which I think is pretty long. So I want to share a few more thoughts from an adult woman who had very challenging children join her family. Oh, here, Nancy says, maybe Gina could ask the 9-year-old what sorts of things mom and dad can do to help him feel that the baby isn't taking up all their time. That was really good advice, Nancy. Don't know why I didn't think of that, but yeah. Ask him, how can we help you? What would make this better for you? And we can have a whole video on this, but one of the things we did was we made big changes to the way we educated our kids. We've been homeschooling. I homeschooled for 23 years, so I was a serious homeschooler. But we ended up having to change up how we educated our kids in order to give attention to our original set of kids who really were losing us in the midst of the trauma and drama that was happening in our home. That's a whole other video probably. Okay, if there are more questions, go ahead and put them out. I'm going to read this responses from this one woman and then start to wrap up. The greatest difficulty for me was coming to grips with the pain inflicted on people I love by people I love. Okay, every time I read that just, it hurts. It's so hard, but it's true. Our children may love their new siblings, but they're having a hard time with the fact that these new siblings might be causing pain to other people in the family. The greatest blessing was growing in my faith by seeing what God did with that pain. Whew. Try not to tear up on this one. Okay, what would you recommend to parents, and how do you prepare the kids? This is important. Be educated and prepared for health and mental health problems, learning disabilities, and trauma. Adopt from a place of fullness and overflowing, not from a place of need. Be prepared for it not to look the way you expected, and don't give up. Be as flexible as possible on as many things as possible. There are a lot of things that just don't matter that much, and we have to loosen our grip. Recognize that parenting children from hard places may look completely different from parenting your previous kids. Individualize their education. Don't assume that what worked for one child will work for all children, which is what our family found. Another important word here from this young adult. Teach your children to have good physical and emotional boundaries. Have safe places in your home and safe people for them to retreat to when things are hard or scary. Teach your kids that privileges and rules correspond to maturity and behavior, not biological age. I think I have a lot I could say about keeping kids safe. Again, learn from our own mistakes, bad decisions on our part. But I think what she's saying is you've got to make sure that your children are safe, that they have safe places they can go, and safe people that they can talk to. Very, very important. All right. This is interesting. Would you recommend that parents change the birth order when bringing in more kids? Recommend? No. But I recognize that general principles shouldn't take precedence over the Holy Spirit bringing children into your family. And I think that's where we all, changing birth order can really, really be very, very hard. But if you are compelled by the Holy Spirit, if you're compelled by God to do that, then you need to answer the way you've been called to answer. Okay, how has this experience shaped you? It has given me more compassion for the mom whose kids are melting down at church or the grocery store. It's made me realize that ideals, educational, dietary, etc., were all well and good. But if applying ideals to a person didn't work, it was the ideals that had to flex because the person didn't have that ability. This made our family so different. It made me able to relate to so many people who I would have never connected with before. It gave me instant connection with other trauma mamas, trauma sibs, and trauma families. And isn't that true? When we find each other, when we find people who are experiencing what we've experienced and living what we've lived, we do have connection. All right, this has gone a little over 30 minutes. I would love to stay on talking about this more. If you want to hear more about siblings, please let me know. I could probably talk about this for hours and hours and hours. We could do a whole retreat on siblings. If you have a child who would like to participate in the survey, or if you grew up with children added to your family from hard places and you want to participate, or they don't even have to be kids from hard places, but kids through adoption or foster care, I'd love to send you this survey. Email me at lisa@onethankfulmom.com and I'll send it to you. You can help me with these videos. I'm kind of loving doing these. They're really fun, and I like doing it. You can help me by liking them and sharing them on Facebook. The Facebook algorithm is difficult. It's a pain. It's really a pain. And the only way they will put these things, anything I write, these videos, into your newsfeed is if people share it and like it. Because if people start sharing and liking, then they'll put it into more news feeds so that what I'm putting out there will actually show up. And I would love for these to be shared more. I'm in the process of creating a YouTube channel and uploading all of them there. It's a little rough still, but so that they'll all be gathered in one place that people can easily find. So thank you. Thank you for reading. Thank you for being here. This has been really great. Thanks for comments. I see a couple more, but thank you. And I will be back. I'm looking at doing Tuesdays and Thursdays for now anyhow, as much as I can. And I also, if you don't subscribe to my friends letter, my little newsletter that I send out, I would love for you to subscribe to that. I try to send one out every 2 or 3 weeks or so to that group of people, my most sort of inner circle of supporters. And I'd love for you to sign up for that. I will put a link to that in the comments of this video if you'd like to do that. So please read, comment, share. I appreciate it so, so much. Have a wonderful day. All right, thanks for coming. Bye.